Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. In this video, I'm going to create a very simple SwiftUI application. Now, this video is inspired from an amazing introduction to SwiftUI session at WWDC 2020, which you can watch at WWDC videos and you can download it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What we want to do is we want to show a list of some items, and when we click on an item, when we touch or tap on the item, we should be able to go to the details. Now I've already created something called a trip class or a trip structure that represents a particular trip. It has a name of the trip or whether that is your favorite trip or not. We also have a all function, which is a static function which returns some hard-coded trips. Another thing to note is the assets folder, and you can see the asset folder contains all of these trips with the images. And you will also notice that I am using Mac OS Big Sur, and actually it is quite nice and quite beautiful. I mean, it may have some bugs, obviously. It's a beta version, it's not really released, but it looks absolutely stunning. Also, my Xcode is Xcode version 12.0 beta. The start of the application in Xcode or new SwiftUI or SwiftUI on iOS 14 is the trips app.swift, which you can see over here that it inherits from the app structure. So this app structure kind of represents your actual app. When you're building new SwiftUI applications, you will create an app and that will be inheriting from the app structure. You're also marking this with @main property wrapper, which is indicating that this is your main or your starting point of your application. And then within over here in the body, each scene, meaning the screens, or a scene which can contain multiple screens, is represented over here by the scene protocol. Within the scene protocol, we have something called a window group. Now, window group is actually interesting because a window group will provide your content view and other views which are inside the window group with some special features if you're running it on Mac OS. So they may provide the menu for duplicating or creating new windows and all of those kind of things. You can also wrap your content view right over here inside a navigation view. And if you do that, then your main view or your root view will contain the navigation bar automatically. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work when you are using the Swift preview, so I can go ahead and create a Swift preview over here. But if you try to run this or resume this, you will see that you may not see the navigation bar at all, right over here. Even if there is a navigation bar, we should be able to set the title and all those kind of things. But if you run the application, you should be able to see the navigation bar and all the titles and everything. So we're not going to use that stuff right now for your navigation view. We are going to get or add the navigation view right inside the content view. Let's go to the content view. Now, the content view, as you can see, it is not much. It simply just displays hello world, and that's pretty much it. What we want to do is we want to display a list of all the different trips or places. So if we want to display a list, we can simply use the list control. So I'm going to go ahead and say list, and I can get all the trips by simply calling trip.all, which will return you an array of all the trips. And I'm going to get the trip, and I can represent each trip by the word trip or by the variable trip. And finally, I can over here go and display the trip. So trip.name. Let's go ahead and refresh our preview and see that if we are able to display all the trips, and we can. Now, one of the other things that I noted is that even though you can use Xcode 12.0 beta on your Mac OS Catalina, I have found that on Catalina, the preview is very, very buggy, and actually most of the time on Xcode 12 beta, it doesn't even run. But since I am using Mac OS Big Sur, it is working fine. There will be some time you will see that the preview is crashing, but that is only because the Mac OS Big Sur is beta and also Xcode is beta. Here we go. You can see actually live, it's kind of like crashing all the time. There we go. All right. Now we do also need to display an image. So I'm going to go ahead and create a edge stack. And inside edge stack, I can go ahead and maybe put an image, which is using the image. And I can pass in the name of the image, which in this case is the same as the trip name. And the images are stored locally. So let's go ahead and save it. And you can see the images are very, very large, obviously. So we don't really want to use that. So I'm just going to say resizable. And now the images are a little bit smaller, but they're still way too much large. We can provide different things. We can provide an aspect ratio. So let's see if we can work with aspect ratio. If I say over here fit, you'll see that those images are still very, very large, even if you're saying fit or fill. So those are also very large. What we want to do is maybe we want to put some sort of a constraint on the image by providing a certain size, let's say 100, and certain height for the image, let's say 100. And that looks fine. We can go ahead and also add some sort of a corner radius to an image to look a little bit more, not that sharp, a little bit more curved. And there we go. So now the images are also rounded corners. For this trip, we can even set the font. So let's go ahead and set the font to something. I'm going to go ahead and say system font. So system, and I'm going to just go ahead and say title and see how the title actually appears. That's fine. Maybe we can add a little bit more gap. So I can go ahead and say padding, and the leading padding, meaning on the left-hand side. And there we go. So we got padding also. Let's go ahead and run the application and see that how it feels when you are running it. Okay, immediately you can see the app is acting a little bit weird. So even though we're running it on a phone, for some reason it switches automatically to a watch. So these kind of problems you're definitely going to be seeing when you're working with the new version of SwiftUI. But at least we were able to look at it over here. We can't really do anything else over here. Let's go ahead and put navigation view also. The reason we're putting a navigation view is because we do want to eventually click on a particular item and go to a different view. So I'm going to go ahead and say navigation view, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to wrap this. So right over here we're going to wrap. So we're going to put everything inside navigation view, which is right there. And there we go. You can see an empty space on the top. This means the navigation view has been added. But the navigation view doesn't really have any title. So I'm going to go ahead and say navigation title. And I'm going to go ahead and pass in something over here, which can be trips. And there we go. If you use navigation bar title, then it's not going to work on the Mac system. If you're building a shared application, then it's not going to work on that. And you can see that this is a shared application. And you can create a shared application by simply going to the project and universal or multi-platform. So that's the one that I selected, multi-platform. This means that this same app should run on Mac and on iPad and things like that. And you do have specific folder for iOS and Mac if you want to put something very specific to iOS platform or Mac. But right now, we're putting everything inside the shared. Let's try to run our preview again, but you can see it's definitely failing. All right, let's go ahead and maybe it is, yeah, okay, so let's call this something else. I'm not sure why it is actually failing all the time. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and run it again. No, it doesn't like me. It's always going to whatever that thing is. It doesn't look like a watch actually, right? I mean, it looks like it is a phone, but it looks kind of weird. I'm not sure why it is showing us like that. It's definitely a weird kind of a bug, you can see. And this is the real one. All right, so what we want to do is that we should be able to click on a particular row like Denver or Houston or Puerto Rico, Seattle or whatever, and we should be able to go to a separate screen. So how should we do that? Well, that is done by something called a navigation link. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this navigation link around the edge stack. And the reason that I am surrounding the navigation link around the edge stack would be that I want to click or press on anything in the edge stack, meaning image, text, or both, or one of those. And for the destination, so let me go ahead and first type this out. The navigation link takes in the destination, which means that which view should we display once you go to the destination. Right now, we're simply saying that go ahead and display a text view, a simple view that is used to display a text, and pass in the trip.name. We already are in the loop because of the list, and we have access to the trip. So it's going to simply pass in the trip name. The second argument of the navigation link is the actual label, meaning, okay, where should I actually click? And that is where you will surround all of this stuff with the navigation link. Let's go ahead and select all of this and press Control I, so it's a little bit arranged. And now you can actually check this out. So I'm going to go ahead and run the application again. And one thing you will notice is that automatically these detailed disclosures are there. You can see that arrow. Now I can click on a Houston and it takes me to a text view which simply says Houston, which is great. If I click on Puerto Rico, it actually shows me Puerto Rico. Really? So this is all working really, really good. Now what if you try to run this, the same example, but not on iPhone, but on iPad 7th generation or any kind of an iPad? So let's go ahead and select it as I selected the iPad. And we didn't really change any code or anything. We're just trying to run the same application on iPad, exactly the same application. And we're trying to see, well, what will happen? If this is a universal kind of app, then it should just run, right? So you can see that the iPad preview is currently loading up. It's loaded. Let's go ahead and run this. Once we get it running, I'm going to go back. And one thing you will notice is that with iPad, it already uses a split view controller. And we can click on Houston and we can see the right-hand side getting changed. So that's pretty cool that with our iPad, we were able to do, we didn't really change any code, it's just working on its own. Great. Okay, let's go back to our iPhone, which is iPhone SE 2nd generation. Great. Okay, now looking at this code, I realize that this edge stack doesn't really look nice over here. Maybe it can be a view of its own. So I can go ahead and say command click, and I can look at this menu. Now, one thing to note about this menu is that this menu is only going to appear if you have on the right-hand side, if you have the preview open. So we can see right-hand side right here. If the preview is open, then you can command click on a particular control and you can select this menu. So I'm going to go ahead and say extract subview, and what it did is that it took all the code and then extracted it into another view. I'm going to go ahead and call this view a trip cell. Now this is all fine, but we were dependent on the trip, so we do need to realize that we need to pass in the trip. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in the trip, which is a model. And now whenever I'm calling a trip cell, which is right over here, I need to make sure that I pass in the trip, which I easily can because the trip is available on line number 15 because we are iterating through a trip array. Let's go ahead and refresh it, which is Option, Command, and P, and it will automatically refresh. We're not really going to see any changes. I mean, it's going to be exactly the same. We can go ahead and run the application also, and it's going to work just as before. So our next step is to actually work on the detail screen. So for detail screen, I'm going to go again to shared. I'm going to go ahead and add a new file, and I'm going to select SwiftUI view because it already contains some default code which I like, and I can say trip detail view, and let's go ahead and create this. Great, we can go ahead and run this. So for the trip detail view, in order for this to work, we will display a couple of different things. We will display the image maybe on the top. We will display kind of like the name of the trip at the bottom somewhere. So this means in order for the trip detail view to work, it does have a dependency on the trip. So you need to pass in the trip. Now if I do like this, basically adding a dependency for passing a trip, you can see that the preview section, which is at the bottom, is complaining that, hey, you forgot to pass the trip. So let's go ahead and pass the trip. Now this is an individual trip, not all the trips. So I can do all, and I can just select maybe one of the trips, so index of 0. And that should at least make the preview happy that we are passing a trip. Okay, so let's go over here, remove the text, and I need to add an image. So I'm going to go ahead and say image. And inside the image, I'm going to pass in the name, which was coming from the trip. So trip.name is fine. And we should be able to see it in the preview, as you can see. Now this is way too big, so I'm going to go ahead and call resizable. And still it will be too long. It's still too big. So now I can go ahead and say maybe aspect fit or aspect ratio. And for the aspect ratio, I'm just going to say over here fit. And that is perfectly fine. Now I do want to also add a navigation title at the top, which should reflect the name of the trip. So I can always go and I can always add over here navigation title, which passing in a particular string. And in this case, the name of the trip will be the title, so I can say trip.name. Okay. Now you can see that it's not really appearing, right? Well, the reason is that when you are using a preview, the preview is not really inside the navigation view. So I can actually go ahead and simply embed it inside the navigation view. So we will get a particular bar at the top, and we should be able to see the title, hopefully. There we go. The image is kind of like at the bottom. If you want to move it up, since we are inside a vertical stack, we can always put a spacer, which is going to push the things up. There we go, nice. We also want the text to be displaying the name of the trip. Although the name of the trip is displayed on the top, we also want to just display it at the bottom somewhere. There we go. And we can also put another spacer to move it a little bit in the middle. The trip name is too small. We can always go ahead and use a system font, which is in this case large title, so that it will display a little bit larger. Great. Now let's go ahead and check it out. We will go to our content view, and instead of the destination to be a simple text view, now we can change the destination to be a trip detail view, and making sure that we are actually passing in a trip. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pass in a trip. Let's go ahead and run the application by pressing on the play button. And I can go on Denver, and Denver is selected. I can go on Houston, and Houston is selected. Isn't that cool that how quickly we were able to build this app? Now, if you were using UIKit, it would have taken a little bit more time to build this similar app. Now, one of the things that we see in our trip details is I should be able to click on this or tap on this and should be able to make it large. So how can we do that? If I go ahead and say fill, you'll see that it kind of fills out. This is what I want. So I need to toggle between fill and fit, which is smaller. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a state variable, which will be a private because this is a local state. The state is basically some sort of a data, condition, or a flag. And the reason is that it is being used to keep your user interface in sync. So I'm going to go ahead and create a state called zoomed, which will be a Boolean value of false. Now, when a person clicks on an image, which we can simply do by using a on-tab gesture, we can go ahead and call it, we can say zoomed.toggle, which means that if it's true, make it false. If it's false, make it true. And depending on that condition, we can actually change the value of fit to fill, which means that I can say over here that if it is zoomed, then go ahead and say fill because we want to fill it, or else we are going to return fit. Let's go ahead and build this again. And we will go ahead and run it. Once it is running, I can click on it and you can see it goes through fit and fill, fit and fill. Pretty cool, right? One of the things that is missing over here is animation, which we can simply add by wrapping this in the with animation block. Now this is going to perform a default animation, and the good thing about this animation is that it is completely interruptible, meaning if it's zooming in, I can simply interrupt it, and there we go. I can completely interrupt it and I can do whatever I want. Now, one other thing that we need to take into account is that if you go to your trip.swift, we do have another property on the trip which is called favorite, and some trips, a couple of them, are actually marked as favorite. You can see that a trip to Denver is marked favorite, trip to Puerto Rico is marked favorite, and a trip to Mexico City has marked favorite. I've been to all of these places, that's why I've added those places. So how can we show a heart when the trip is favorite and don't show a heart when the trip is not favorite? By the way, all of these places that we have listed, I have listed, I love all of those places, all right? Okay, so the first thing is that we need to put the heart somewhere. So let's go over here and I will try to put a heart right here. The good thing is that we can simply press function, control, command, space, and this will pop up and we can select the heart. Okay, for some reason I didn't select it. Let's go ahead and again. There we go, heart. But now it's going to display heart every single time. We only want to display the heart if it is favorite or not. We can use the same exact technique that we use for zoomed. We can go ahead and say over here that if the trip.is favorite or favorite, if it is favorite, then display the heart, or else display, well, nothing, just leave it. And we can always check this out. Right now on 0 is Denver, so let's go ahead and check this index out at 1, and you'll see for Houston it doesn't show anything. For number 2, it's going to show Seattle, it doesn't show anything. For number 3, which is Puerto Rico, it shows the heart. So you can already see that it is working out correctly. Let's go ahead and check out our final app. I'm going to go ahead and play this. I can go and check out Denver. You can see the heart being displayed, Seattle with no heart. Then you have Puerto Rico with the heart, San Francisco, and then Mexico City. So with very few lines of code, we were able to create a application which has a master detail view, and we were able to go from one page to another page. We were able to add some zooming effects and all of those things with only a few lines of code, not that complicated. All right. If you like this course and want to support my channel, then check out my course SwiftUI Declarative Interfaces for any Apple device. This is a 16+ hour course, and you can see this is the best-selling course with more than 4,000 students enroll. Now this course is going to start from the very beginning, from building lists and navigation. Then it's going to do a deep dive into understanding the MVVM design pattern, implementing the coffee ordering app, which allows you to integrate with JSON API, and also how to work with core data with SwiftUI. And I'm also adding SwiftUI 2.0 or SwiftUI for iOS 14, Lazy V Grid, Progress View, Map, Color Picker, Date Picker, and many much more as soon as I learn more stuff, I'll just keep on adding and making this course amazing. Now, the best way to get this course is to check out the link in the description. And I really recommend that you use the links. And there are many other links for my different courses. So if you like other courses like Augmented Reality, ARKit, or you like other courses like for Vapor and all of those things, or machine learning, definitely check those out. Your support means really a lot for me. And thank you so much for your continuous support. And I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. Thank you.